Hi, everybody. You're listening to Radio Cherry Bombe, and I'm your host, Kerry Diamond, coming to you from Newsstand Studios at Rockefeller Center in New York City. Today's guest is one of my heroes, Ruthie Rogers. Ruthie is the force behind the River Cafe in London, and she's in town to talk about her brand new book, Table 4 at the River Cafe. It's not a cookbook. It's a compilation of interviews from her podcast, Ruthie's Table 4, which happens to be one of my favorites. Each week, Ruthie talks to her friends about life, food, and family. And Ruthie's friends just happen to be some of the most talented, creative folks around. So many people we love and admire, like Nigella Lawson, Tina Fey, Greta Gerwig, Tracey Emin, Alice Waters, and Mary McCartney. They're all in Ruthie's book, as are dozens of others. Ruthie opened the River Cafe as a sandwich shop back in 1987 with her business partner, Rose Gray. The restaurant has evolved over the past 39 years to become one of the most celebrated in the industry. So not only do Ruthie and I talk about her book and her life, but I asked her a few questions about running a successful business and how she's done it over the years. I learned a lot from our conversation, as I always do when I talk to Ruthie. Stay tuned for my chat with Ruthie Rogers. There's a lot going on at Cherry Bombe, as per usual. I'm writing a lot more for our Substack, which you can find at cherrybombe.substack.com. We've got lots of free content for you, including recipes and our radio newsletters. We also have a few things behind a paywall, as you do these days. You can subscribe for $6 a month or $55 per year and get all the great stories, including our magazine cover stories, and you get access to our subscriber-only monthly meetings. The next one is coming up on April 1st with award-winning restaurateur and author Molly Irani. The meetings take place the first Wednesday of every month at 3 p.m. EST, and we send the recording out afterwards in case you missed it. Subscribers also get discounts to ticketed events like our annual Jubilee Conference, which Ruthie has spoken at. It's taking place this year on Saturday, April 25th at the Glass House. Head over to our Substack and check it out. And I'm always happy for any feedback about our Substack, our show, our magazine, all the things. So feel free to DM me on Substack or Instagram. Now, let's check in with today's guest. Ruthie Rogers, welcome back to Radio Cherry Bombe.
Thank you.
What a thrill. You are such a hero to me, and I look up to you in so many ways.
Really? Oh, so kind. I look up to you, and I love where we are. We should tell everybody we're sitting in this incredible window.
We are at Newsstand
Rockefeller
Studios.
Center. It's beautiful.
It's an old newsstand that when they renovated the lobby, I think they realized it was here and they should do something cool with it, and they started a podcast studio.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love the space, and it shows what you can do with little.
Absolutely. And I also am very proud to be here because Rockefeller Center has such a rich media history.
Yeah.
And you've spent some time. We're going to jump right
Saturday
ahead.
night. I was at Saturday Night Live on.
You went to the Harry Styles Saturday Night Ruthie.
I did. It was fabulous. 2 days before that, I was on the Jimmy Fallon show.
Well, let's tell people why we're here. You have a brand new book. It's called Table 4 at the River Cafe, and it is based on your fabulous podcast, Ruthie's Table 4, which I have adored from day one. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But you are having a very big week. You kicked it off with The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon.
Yes.
You were great.
Oh, he was great. Yeah.
Were you nervous?
I spent, a lot of time thinking about this, and I was apprehensive. I wanted to be good. I wanted it to be good. But people kept saying to me, friends and everything, just be yourself, which was really hopeless advice because it doesn't help. What I did was, as I often do, I did the reverse, which is I just sat in the room and I went through the book and I thought about what he might ask, and I thought about all the quotes from people that had participated and, some of the comfort foods. And so I really immersed myself and just worked through the day thinking about it. And then I went there to the studio, and from the minute you walk in, you're working with people who are so good and so, love what they do, but also have a rigor. And so his co-producer, his assistant, his director, I don't know who they all were, but they came and sat with me and we talked about it. And that morning they had asked for some more photographs. And I remembered the video that I'd done with Paul McCartney. I said, would you possibly want to use this? And I sent it to them. It's a little clip of me actually teaching Paul how to play Heart and Soul when he was in the restaurant one day on a piano we have in the private dining room. And they said, we would love to. So I said, well, we can't unless they give permission. So I wrote to Nancy McCartney and she said, use it. So it was spontaneous, but it really worked.
My favorite thing of your interview was I felt like you were sending kind of not so subliminal messages via what you were wearing. You
Oh.
had a heart necklace on that had a peace sign.
Yes.
And I remember the first time I interviewed you, I actually didn't even know you were American. You're
really? Yeah.
so closely associated with London and the London food scene that I was just convinced you were British. And you talked to me about being a young woman growing up in New York State and protesting the Vietnam War.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I did it then I moved to London when I was quite young. I was 19. That was really the height of everyone in 1968. What was happening in France on the streets, what was happening in Berlin, what was happening in New York, the free speech movement. So I think we were all very politically active in different ways.
And you remain so.
And I remain so, yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Especially times like this right now, it's very troubling. And I feel we all need to be, well, everybody who feels that way, how do we oppose? What do we do?
But that was a beautiful message to send out to everyone.
Thank you.
You are a podcaster. You probably never thought you'd be a podcaster. You launched the show, was it 2021?
Yes, wasn't it? Yeah.
Not a cooking podcast. I think that was the other assumption. People are like, oh, Ruthie's doing a podcast. Okay, it must be about how to cook. It's not about how to cook. Tell us what the podcast is about and why you wanted to do a podcast.
Yeah, well, as you said, it was 2021, and it was a time when we didn't know about the pandemic, how long it would take, the effect it would have. We closed the restaurant very early, as soon as we had a sense that this was a dangerous time for our people who were working there. We wanted to protect the staff. We wanted to protect everyone. So there wasn't a law that we had to close, but we did. And there was a sense, how do we connect with the people who come to the River Cafe? How do we connect with everyone? And so a friend of mine years ago took me to Roberta's here in Brooklyn, and they had a radio station. And I'd always thought, wouldn't it be cool to have a radio station? This is way before we thought about podcasts.
That's where we got our start. Heritage Radio Network.
Yeah. I just thought it was a beautiful idea. And so I thought, well, maybe what we could do is just every day, read a recipe. And that came, again, from the idea that we had, Richard and I, my husband, had a large space in our house. And we thought, why don't we ask the actors, the writers, the poets, the musicians to do a performance in our living room, to ask people to pay to come and then give half the money to a charity of their choice and the other half to ours. Ian McKellen came one night, and he read a sonnet by Shakespeare. He told an anecdote about acting at the National Theater. He told a story about his first night solo performance. He was just wonderful. He played a song. But the very last thing, and he never told me he was going to do it, is he read a recipe for ribollita on the steps going up to our house. And it was mesmerizing. And so, I always say a recipe is half poetry and half science. And so we thought, well, we'll read a recipe every day. And then Graydon Carter, who's a close friend, when I told him this idea, he said, well, I really think that's a great idea, but why don't you segue into the person's story? And so we did. We did them mostly by Zoom, because in those early days it was hard to, although Michael Caine, we did it face-to-face. And Wes Anderson I did by Zoom. Wes Anderson interviewed himself. Jake, who Gyllenhaal is a really good friend, he was in L.A., and so we just tried it, and then we pitched to iHeart. And so an idea was born, and a series began.
It's so interesting that it was Graydon, because I had assumed that this was your way to not have to talk about yourself.
Yeah, probably as well. I think so. I think I'm much better. This is, you're being wonderful, and thank you for having me. I think, I also work on the basis that everybody has a story. And, I work in a restaurant every day where there are, a lot of people sitting at tables, and you see people and you just think, they all look so happy or so great, and, they're there eating their lunch or dinner. And I always tell a story. A friend of mine came in and said, I don't know if I want to sit down. They all look so great. And my kid's just gone into rehab. And I said, go to any table in this room, and you'll have someone whose father maybe lost his job, whose mother has an illness, or celebrating a child graduating from high school, or a birthday. There, people go to restaurants to do, I say, very private things in a public space.
Yes.
So we all have a story, and I think on the podcast, on Ruthie's Table 4, we really try and do the story through the prism, or the lens of food. So if I asked you, did your mother cook? Did your father cook? Did you go to restaurants to celebrate? What was the first meal you had when you could pay for it yourself? What was the first meal you cooked when you wanted your girlfriend to be impressed or your boyfriend to be impressed? There's so many reasons that we cook and we associate food, and many memories are unleashed when you talk about food.
I know you'd rather be asking me all those questions. The second Ruthie sat down, she said, "What can we say about you?"
Yes, what can we say about who cooked in your? Did your mom
you're
cook?
not gonna, No, you're not going to do it.
I know what we'll do. We'll book you coming on my pod. You have to come to London.
I'm overdue for a visit.
Yeah,
to
you
London,
are.
and I love the River Cafe so dearly.
Well, we're waiting for you.
We'll be right back with today's guest. Today's show is presented by Family Style, the cookbook from Peter Somm. From culinary creator, lifestyle expert, and award-winning fashion designer Peter Somm, Family Style is a beautiful cookbook featuring more than 100 recipes with unique and creative flavor combinations, paying homage to Peter's identity, heritage, and family. There are beloved nods to his grandmother's Cantonese flavor profiles, his mom's deep love of French food, his Bay Area upbringing, and desserts that are not too sweet, the highest compliment in his family. For Peter, nothing is quite as satisfying as the moment when everyone is gathered around the table and platters of food are set down for everyone to dig into together. The Family Style cookbook is perfect for an everyday meal at home, but it's also sophisticated, elegant, and visually stunning. Needless to say, it makes for a great gift. Some standout recipes: burnt miso cinnamon toast, crispy deviled tea eggs, radicchio and fennel salad with creamy miso maple dressing, cacio e pepe sticky rice with egg, and lychee lime pavlova. Pick up a copy of the Family Style Cookbook by Peter Somm at your favorite bookstore. We love Peter here at Cherry Bombe, and I really think you're going to love his cookbook. I think you've done over 200 episodes at this point. What surprised you?
Two things that stand out to me. Well, a few things. Whether they surprised me or just I saw a kind of pattern. One is that most of the people I interviewed did not grow up entitled, and they see food and the enjoyment of food as a measure of their success. You know, they might also see being able to live in a beautiful house or send their children to good schools or have a certain kind of car. But for food, which they would think they never really had, they weren't poor. I mean, I've had Tracey Emin was fed by the Salvation Army, and, you know, there was poverty. But the link between being able to drink a good glass of wine, to take someone out to dinner and not have to completely look at the prices, to, you know, explore a restaurant, to travel and learn about culture through food. Really, they saw as a measure of the work that they had done through their work that enabled this. I suppose the other thing that was interesting to me is how many people spoke about their grandmothers more than their mothers or fathers, that the role of the grandparent. And as a grandparent, I understand that you are cooking in a different way for your grandchildren. You know, as a working mother, you're rushing home and you're trying to get it all done and on the table and do the homework. Or as a non-working mother, you're thinking about whatever it is and wanting to provide a good meal. Many people talk about their mothers or fathers, and fathers who, you know, cooked for them or couldn't cook. I respect people who don't cook and can't cook, and maybe given the choice would rather do homework or read a play or watch a movie with their children than to cook a meal. I understand all that. So I think that was another interesting thing about the role of the grandmother. People who came from other countries, immigrants who are so important to our lives and give so much to our country, political statement. My grandparents came here, one set from Russia, one from Hungary.
So you knew both sets of grandparents?
Yeah, I did. My grandfather, my mother's side, died in the flu epidemic in 1917. So I think I learned that about immigrant families, the mother trying to adapt to a new place with her children, the children almost rejecting the food of the country they've left and embracing with their friends, you know, the food of, in my case, London. But the grandmother kind of holding on to it as a kind of source of identity and seeking out fruits and the vegetables that she might have had in Ghana, in Syria. So I think that's interesting.
So who cooked when you were growing up?
When I cooked, my mother. My father would do, you know, like a lot of men of the probably 60s or 50s or whatever. He was a doctor, but he would love to cook on the weekends, you know, barbecue mostly, you know, grilled steaks, great martinis, you know. So that's cooking. He made a mean martini.
I heard you can only drink one martini a year.
Oh, my gosh. I can only drink one martini when I drink a martini. Yeah, two is...
You told the How Long Gone guys that.
Did I?
Yes.
When I'm under the table, yeah. Do you know that? Dorothy Parker said, you know, I love a dry martini. It's a drink that I like most. One, I'm under the table. And two, I'm under the host Yeah.
Yeah. I think I've read that line.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't drink martinis.
You don't
Not for that reason, but they're just
it's
very
a bit
strong.
too much.
Yes.
Yeah. My mom was a librarian and a teacher, and then became a librarian. They entertained a lot. I think in my house I grew up with food as a way that we could sit around a table and talk more than, we always ate well, but my mother discovered Julia Child, I think, and that changed food in our house. But it was pretty simple, but good.
And then your classic question is, what is your comfort food?
Comfort food. Well, I always say, if people eat, we don't always eat out of hunger, do we? We eat to share, we eat to impress, we eat to have fun. But sometimes we also eat when we need comfort. And what do we turn to? And that's been a revelation for me as well. The food that people choose, whether it's a, peanut butter jelly sandwich from Austin Butler because he reminded of his mother who passed away. David Beckham still loves to have a really good risotto. A lot of people do choose carbs. I would say more carbs than sugar, I guess mine would also go in the carb. I love tomato pasta, made with very fine tagliarini. And I put quite a lot of butter in the pasta, and then I toss it with tomato sauce. So it's sort of something I do that I try to keep hidden. I always say, go and sit down so they don't see that addition of butter, but it is good.
Well, do you ever do the butter in the tomato sauce?
No, that's a mozzarella, I think.
Hassan,
Yeah.
The half an onion.
I prefer to make it so it's kind of every strand of pasta has that bit of butter through it, and then a very, just really simple. I made it the other night for some friends in New York. Actually,
so you toss the pasta with butter
well,
first.
What I've said, I never drain the pasta. So I make in one pan, I make the slow cooked tomato sauce, which literally just has cloves of garlic, which I get soft. And then I put the jars of tomato we get from Puglia. And I think there's a big difference. You can get the ones in the cans, but you must make sure you get rid of all that tomato juice around it. And then you put it in a colander and cut it. And then I just warm the garlic with the oil, and then put in the tomatoes and basil, cook it for a while. And then I boil the tagliarini. I use a Cipriani tagliarini. It's expensive, but it's really good. And so I have pot. And then with tongs, I take it out and put it into a little strainer. And then I put that on top of the tomato sauce. And then I take some butter and I toss it through. Before I toss it all, just toss it through the pasta. And then I toss the tomato in it. And so it makes it just a bit more connected.
Sounds very glossy and sexy.
It's glossy and sexy.
Those are the first two words that came to mind.
That's just what you need comfort from, but it does work.
And your comfort food changes all the time.
It does. Sometimes
I know
I
you've
have an ice cream.
Different answers, yes.
I love ice cream. Ice cream's my favorite dessert. And so,
what's Ruthie Rogers' ice cream flavor of choice?
Vanilla. Yeah,
really?
How about that? Yeah, I love vanilla ice cream. I just love it. If it's good. Of course, in the River Cafe we do. Really, people love the stracciatella. They love like the roasted almond. I think I would say signature, but the one that everybody associates with us, and I love to make, is the caramel, because literally I take it outside to do it. We get the sugar and the water so dark that it's not dark enough, and you have to take it outside and let it get even darker. And then you pour in the custard, and I'm sure it gives you life-threatening diseases. I've always said this is the most unhealthy way to cook.
It's the way to go, though.
It's the way to go, because it really is strong.
Mm-hmm. That's so
but I love vanilla.
Okay.
That's sort of at the end of a meal what I want to have.
Yeah. Well, it's such a classic, and I guess if you can do a beautiful vanilla, you can do anything.
And sorbets, right now we have blood orange sorbet. In the summer, sort of strawberry, raspberry sorbets that my mother-in-law, who is from Trieste, taught us how to make.
Dada.
It's nothing, dada. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's nothing but the fruit and sugar and lemon.
Beautiful. Mm. The color of a blood orange sorbet is so gorgeous.
Isn't it?
Oh my gosh.
It's gorgeous.
That pink just kills me.
Yeah.
Why did you want to do a book? People will see this and think it's another cookbook, but it's way more than that. Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, I have to say, Amy Bell at Simon & Schuster, she came into the restaurant one day and said, why don't we do a book? And I said, well, because it's a podcast, She said, let's do this. And a conversation started, and she's just been really magnificent. And I guess everything you would want in an editor. And it was very different from other books, because when we decide to do a cookbook, whether it's easy or whether it's a classic Italian or whether we sit down, right away with a photographer and a designer, and Matthew Donaldson in this case, and Anthony Michaels and Stephanie Nash. And we all said, okay, we're going to do a book about, say, vegetables, because we were thinking about doing another green book. And then it works very organically to decide how we're going to do it, what we're going to do. With the podcast book, we had all the content because we had, at that time, probably 180 interviews. And we had the interviews, we had their recipes, because every guest reads a recipe. I write an introduction for every podcast, mostly not to tell you about the person, what they've done or what they've written, what they've acted in, but how I feel about them. And it kind of serves as a connection between us before we start. And I like that. Whether it's a bit old-fashioned, and I often think that we don't need to or shouldn't do it. So we had the introductions, we had the transcripts, and then the challenge was also that we had their recipes, and we had their comfort food. And then the challenge was, there were a lot of challenges. How do we do the photography? Because some were taken on iPhones, some were taken by good photographers. Most of them were taken in front of the wood oven. How do you get a consistency? And we tried blowing them up big, and you don't want to start a chapter with a big photograph of someone. I didn't anyway. And with different qualities. If we'd started out that way, But we thought, well, why don't we take a photograph of the photograph, put it on the table in a kind of setting. Every photograph would be on a table in the River Cafe, whether there was a glass of wine or a piece of cake or some breadsticks. And so we had a kind of structure. And then the hardest thing, and I took myself completely out of it, as if any of my friends are listening, because I had to choose the ones that, should go in. And I wanted everyone, and Amy wanted 55. They did that. And then we divided the book into chapters. There's food is family, food is politics, food is art, with artists, with politicians, with my family or families. I have my son Ruse in one, and my brother Michael Elias is in it. And his was really good, my brother, because I think his memories were so interesting about us growing up, and his life as an actor and writer of movies like The Jerk and other films. So I love his one. I love my son's. I love all the McCartneys. We had Paul and Stella and Mary.
Mary's been on the show.
Beckhams with Victoria.
She's amazing.
Isn't she? Yeah, Victoria Beckham and David. And
I can imagine for you it was so painful trying to figure out who to. Thank God you didn't have to figure out who to cut
terrible
and who
now.
to keep.
The book is out. I have to go around apologizing to every person.
You are legendarily loyal and a great friend.
Well,
what's the secret?
I think if you love someone, you want to protect them. You want to have fun with them. You want to empathize. And I don't know. It's not a problem for me because I have I'm so lucky.
How do you keep track of everyone?
There aren't that many. No, there aren't.
That's not true.
No, that's true. There are a lot of friends, but then the ones, and my husband died a few years ago, and so there's time to connect. These are the people that saw me through. The people I met someone yesterday, Declan Kelly, who I met him a few weeks ago, and we just had a coffee here, and we're sort of thinking about what we could do. He has a great podcast, Grey Matters. So it's how we roll.
I'm so impressed by how you keep track of all these people in your life. Do you have a wish list of people you haven't interviewed yet? Folks you would like to interview?
Well, I mostly think about the present. I would love to have the Obamas. I would love to have Eileen Gu, who I think is awesome. She just won the Olympics and has a real social value in her life. I would have loved to have interviewed my husband. Richard, I think he would have been, my favorite.
The famous architect. How are you feeling about the Centre Pompidou renovations?
Excited.
Yeah.
Frida Escobedo is one of the people in the book, an architect in Mexico. I lived in Mexico City for a few months. I think, I know who I want to interview. I want to interview your mayor.
Oh.
Yeah. I really would like. Yeah, I would really love to interview him.
We're inviting him and his wife to Jubilee.
Okay. Well, he really cares about food, and I just did one with Daniel Lurie, who's the mayor of San Francisco, and one with Sadiq Khan, who's the mayor of London. So I would love, and I'm a huge fan.
He not only cares about food, he cares about the people who make and serve the food.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah. I think when he talks about diversity and being recognizable in the restaurants, and that's what I believe. I think we're so lucky to have people from other countries bring us their food and teach us how to dance. And
well, I hope you get him for an interview because that's kind of the one we're all waiting
for. If he's
for.
Listening.
Yes, Zoran. All right, let's talk about River Cafe because not everybody has been lucky enough to go visit the restaurant. You famously changed the menu all the time. Every meal. But there are a few things you have to keep on the menu or else you will get in trouble.
Yes.
What are those things?
Well, let's say that I don't think there's been a menu since 1987. We're going to be 40 in a year and a half. That doesn't have squid rocket and chili, which is the grilled squid, which really Rose I don't know who taught her, but it's the idea that you take a piece of squid, you clean the squid, you open it up, and then you kind of do cross-hatching with a knife, and it curls up, and then we just do that with the fresh red chili and some arugula. I think we probably haven't had a menu since maybe a couple of years after that has the nemesis.
Your famous chocolate cake.
Always nemesis, yeah. And then after that, I think with the squid and with the nemesis, we always have mozzarella because it's the only thing that really comes to the River Cafe by plane. We're so lucky that we have the contact with Italy, that has been forged through 40 years almost with their new suppliers and people we've worked with for just a few years, but some that really go way back, starting with the wine, but then branching out. So we had the mozzarella once got stopped in British customs, and ever since then we've always had mozzarella. And then we have, salumi, but that can change. And what else would I say? Then, the menu is quite simple. We have six or eight, so 8 starters, maybe antipasti, maybe a few more. And then we have 4 pastas. So sometimes it'll be a risotto, maybe 2 fresh pastas, a tagliarini and a ravioli, and then a hard pasta, fusilli in the summer, or with pesto, or rigatoni with langoustine. We do a kind of cacio e pepe, which breaks all the rules because it then has fish with it. But it's a recipe that I ate.
Right, fish and cheese.
Yeah, and I ate it in Verona, and I remember having it in this restaurant. And again, it's amazing. It's pecorino and parmesan and langoustine and a hard pasta. I remember calling Rose and telling her about it. And then by the time I got back to London, it was on the menu, and she'd kind of made it her way. And then we have 3 fish and 3 meat. And we have a grill. It's quite a small kitchen. It's an open kitchen. It's a beautiful kitchen, I think. And we have a grill. We have a wood oven. We have a meat on the grill, a meat in the wood oven, and a meat roasted like a, slow-cooked fiochin, and then, or bollito misto. And then we'll have a fish, perhaps sea bass or monkfish, scallops. And then we do one in the oven, and then sometimes with potatoes, and then we do one in the wood oven.
For those who are salivating, but also thinking, I'm never going to be able to go to the River Cafe.
Why?
Well, I don't know. Not everybody can go to London.
You can come and just have a bowl of pasta.
But I was going to say...
call me on my mobile, and I'll make sure... I'm talking to the world, not to you.
Yes, just you can give your phone number out right now.
It's +44. I was once at a party when Mike Bloomberg did that,
No.
He did. He said, and guys, it was about 200 people there. I'll never forget it. It was at the Serpentine Gallery. And he gave a talk as his first year being chairman of the board. And at the end of it, he said, now listen, if you come to New York, I'm mayor, but I have time. Give me a ring and we'll have a coffee or have lunch. And this is my number. We all wrote down.
How funny.
I don't think anybody had the courage to actually come to New York and call the mayor. But
did you never use the number?
No, I didn't. But I did meet him, and he's in the book.
I know he'll take your calls.
He's giving it.
Well, I'm just thinking not everybody's going to, be able to go to London. But that was my lead in to say that you have fabulous cookbooks that really are like a gift from God.
Oh,
and they are so unintimidating.
Okay, Alice Waters, Wolfgang Puck, Jeremy King, a lot of people, really Sally Clark, and really thought, why do you either go to a really good restaurant and be scared of the wine, sommelier, or the being late and the chef getting angry, or whether you can understand the menu, but eat very well, or else go to a happy restaurant like a Greek or a Chinese or an Italian, or have fun, but not maybe eat that well. So we thought, let's have a restaurant where you can have a good time, not be intimidated, but eat well.
I'm always amazed when I'm looking for a recipe or inspiration from your books, how few ingredients are in everything.
Yeah, well, I think like in everything, probably less is a bit more. No, but it's not precious. It's that Nouvelle Cuisine thing, which we all loved, where you'd get a big plate with 2 carrots and 4 green beans, which were perfectly cooked. I think it's just thinking, very often I look at the menus that are being written by the chef, and I say, let's see what we can take off. Do we need sea bass with fresh borlotti beans and salsa verde and braised spinach? Why don't we just do the borlotti beans and some salsa verde? That. And just saying, and sometimes we do need it. Sometimes, yes, you say you do want the green and you do want the beans and you do want... But very often you can take something off.
I want to talk to you about a few things about running a business. But before that, I have to tell people when you sat down, I said, Ruthie, I have to tell you how in love I am with this one recipe. It's your kale pesto. And you're like, we don't have a recipe for kale pesto.
I'm really confused. I didn't want to say it, but you're not the first person to have said that. Somebody said it to me the other day here in New York as well. It's become I don't know, somehow the kale pesto. And I go, oh yeah, I'm really glad you like our recipe for kale pesto. And I was going, what is kale pesto?
You looked so nervous when I said it. You were like, what are you talking about? Tell people what I call kale pesto. Tell them what you call it.
Whatever you want. One of the great trips and one of the things that we have done in the River Cafe, Rose and I used to do it ourselves, is to go to Italy in October, November, when the olives are harvested and made into olive oil. And it has a completely different flavor and a taste from what you will have 6 months later or a year later. And so we go to Chianti. Now we go further afield. We also eat. It's a great learning experience. And you go to the estates. It's quite hard work. You go to the estates and you go through the olive oil and you taste the different oils and you choose the oil we want and the different olive oils we want. And then, again, do the same with the wine. We go and see the new wine and talk about the wine. And then we have lunch. And it's cooked by the family. It's agriculture. And it started with just Rose and I, and then it was Rose and I and a couple of people. And I think now we take 30 people. We take 15 to Tuscany and 15 to Piemonte.
I mean, you say people, these are the
people
the team
work in the River
Cafe.
Cafe. So chefs go, we choose a few waiters, the sommeliers go, about 15 of us. And if you've been to Tuscany 1 year, then the next year you get to Piemonte. There's a rigor to it as well. You have to have worked in the River Cafe for 2 years. But the experience of actually doing that is so important for the people who cook the food but have never been exposed to it, and especially Italian home cooking. So this pasta, the cavoloneros, they don't harvest it, they don't pick it until after the first frost. So it really coincides with the arrival of the new oil. And it's a pasta that is made. So I always think, as I was saying to you, that you think of kale as being that kind of frizzy vegetable, the curly greens, yeah.
I'm going to show you a picture.
And that's what you call kale. How interesting. Well, we call that cavallonero, black cabbage.
So in case you're wondering, we sometimes call it here lacinato, if I'm saying that right. Lacinato kale, dinosaur kale, or Tuscan kale.
Okay.
It's the smooth, beautiful green kale.
Yeah,
not the curly kale.
Not the curly kale.
Yeah, don't use the curly kale for this.
Don't use the curly kale. When we don't call it a pesto because it doesn't have pine nuts, and we put very little. You do need to put garlic in it. It's just when we had it there, it's just like the most beautiful dark green. Boil the cavolo very often with cloves of garlic in the boiling water, and then we simply puree it, add the olive oil, and then sometimes we put the cheese in it. Sometimes we put the cheese on top. I actually like it with no cheese.
I didn't even use cheese. I used a little bit of salt. Cheese. I mean, I hope everybody is writing this down. But it's 4 ingredients.
Yeah, there's the cavolo, the garlic, the olive oil, and the seasoning, yeah?
And it is so silky and beautiful.
Yeah.
And I have to give credit to Romilly Newman, who is on our cover right now with her mom. She's a huge fan of yours and the River Cafe. And she was the one who said, you have to make this.
Yeah.
And it's really just spectacular. And I know you don't call it pesto, but if you miss pesto and you pretty much abide by the seasons.
Yes.
Of course you can get basil right now, but please don't.
No, I agree
Wait
with
until
you.
the summer. But if you love that taste and texture and just sensation, it's such a great seasonal substitute.
No, it is really good. And again, you wouldn't have this in the summer. You would never have it in the spring. It's, October to whenever, end of January, February.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love it so much.
Good.
Thank you for sharing that recipe. Let's talk about work, because one of the things we're focusing on a little bit more at Cherry Bombe this year is how to run a good business and how to be a better business person. Because you know this, when we started Cherry Bombe in 2013, there weren't as many women in the industry as there are now, doing so many incredible things at every level of the food world. So today there are more women, there is more opportunity, but it is so hard to run a business. Like you mentioned, River Cafe is going to be 40 years old, which is remarkable. Some folks might not know it started as a humble sandwich shop. When you started this, you had never even worked in a restaurant.
No.
How did you know what to do?
Well, I say restrictions sometimes are the best thing that can happen to you. So I was a stepmother and a mother of 4 children, and we came back from Paris. We wanted a community. We wanted a place. We found these warehouses, and Richard put his architectural practice there. And there was always a space to eat. I apologize if everybody knows the story, but basically we had applications for putting a little cafe there with food. And so out of that, we decided, I just said to Richard, maybe I'll do it. I had a graphic designer. My kids were now in school, and just thought maybe this is what I'd rather do than help, design exhibitions or books or whatever.
Right. Your husband was building his headquarters there.
Yeah, he was the architect for the Pompidou Centre, and then we came back to London. And Renzo Piano, who did it with Pompidou, went back to Genoa and opened an office in Paris. We went back to London.
And it was a little desolate back then.
It was really desolate. It still
like
is a little bit further away. But it's not
true.
desolate.
No, it's not desolate.
No, it isn't.
But you needed a place where everybody could go.
Yeah, it was a place
lunch.
that you could communicate, that you could talk over work, over food. I knew that Rose Gray was, she was a friend of my husband's from high school kind of thing. She worked with Keith McNally at Nell's, and so we just started talking, and we went to look at the space. We saw that it was small. We knew that we were competing not with other restaurants. I mean, I think we always were ambitious. We knew we were going to be a restaurant. We knew we were going to be the best restaurant. We knew that we wanted it to have the kind of Italian food. Rose had lived in Italy. My family was Italian through Richard's family. And so we had ambitions for it, but we were restricted. We could only be open at lunch. And to the people who worked in the warehouses. And the two of us just started with the idea that we had to be very cheap because of the people working there. She did sandwiches and I would make one pasta. And we put the squid on the menu. We did, have two menus. And then the next day I would do the sandwiches and she would do the pasta. We just did it. We kind of learned as she knew more because she'd worked with Keith and she came back to London and really wanted to be a chef. So
she had worked at Nell's.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then when she came back to London, she worked at a restaurant called 192 and Carluccio's. Richard's office was fantastic. They funded it, gave us his economic advisor, which I would recommend to anyone, when you start a restaurant, he was said, okay, if you have an espresso, you pay for that espresso, Ruthie, and you really watch after everything. And so it began. And I think, just being able to do it very organically, very slowly, very carefully meant a lot.
How did you evolve it over time?
Space. We had a space that we first had that we could put in the kitchen, which was open. We always knew we wanted an open kitchen. It was like the way we cooked at home. We could fit 9 tables. We could fit a grill and a fryer and a tiny sink and a dishwasher. That was it, Every person had a view of the river or the space. It was bright. It was light. We went to the reject shop and bought secondhand furniture, but the furniture looked like Gropius chairs, And so we cared, and Richard's architects helped us. And then I suppose 6 months later, or a year later, we could expand a bit. And so we managed to put the storage space, have a bit more storage. I think the real change was one of my favorite pages in the last book. I should have brought it with me as a plan of how we grew from the 6 tables in 1987 to where we are now. And then in 1994.
How many tables do you have today?
Oh, I don't know, but if we could seat 30 people in 1987, yesterday for Mother's Day lunch in Britain, I think we had 260 people.
Wow.
So I hope that what hasn't changed, we've grown, the space has grown, the kitchen has grown. We had a fire in 2008, and that's when we radically changed it. We had a totally open kitchen. We had the wood oven stood standing by itself. We had private dining room and a proper entrance. And what I hope hasn't changed are the values that we started with, that everyone is involved in the food, that we teach through hope rather than fear, I'm there every day. Rose, passed away which was by far the greatest tragedy for the restaurant and for me. And also we just determined if you can see Rose if you walk in the restaurant, in the way we cut the bread, in the way we grill the squid, the way we talk about food. She's there. I think that if we've grown in size, I hope that, obviously running a business, as you say, it's not all touchy-feely at all. We're all a team, and we, as I say, we teach through hope rather than fear, but there's a rigor there. That people are coming in for lunch, the curtain goes up at 12:30, the restaurant has to be clean, the chefs have to be the way they want to present themselves as chefs, the almond tart has to be cooked, and the menu has to be written, and all that takes rigor and professionalism, and the margins are tough. Right now we're living in a world which is a complete economic and social crisis.
Mm-hmm. What have you learned about hiring over the years?
That's a good question. I think what you do is you have an instinct What do you look for when you hire someone? I hire them for their curiosity, their energy, their kindness. How will they be under stress, under pressure? How will they respond to criticism? How will they give criticism? All that, I think, and I know there are restaurants that make you make an omelet or that. In a way, you find that out right away. And what you need to find out is how they work. They come and do a stage, which we pay for. They do shifts, and then we say, okay, you have, come and start working here. But then we have a review after, I think, a month or 2 months. 2 months, I think. And it's rare that somebody comes to work for us and then is asked to leave at the end of 2 months. That doesn't work out. But sometimes it's not the right kitchen for them, and they're not the right person for us.
What advice do you have about being a good mentor? Because you have mentored so many people directly, but also indirectly, people who just admire what you do. We mentioned Sean.
Oh, yeah, Sean is great.
Mm-hmm.
Sean is a great teacher.
There's also, I should mention, here at Rockefeller Center, you have Jess Shadbolt and Claire DeGoer.
Jess was
your assistant.
This is my PA. She is amazing. And she once turned to me and said, Ruthie, I have to talk to you. And when they look at you, you think, okay, it's coming, they're going to leave. She said, I want to be a chef. And I said, no, you don't. You want to be a PA. You really don't want to be a chef. But she did. And she went to Ballymaloe for 3 months, and she came back, and she came to work. And she almost couldn't say hello to us. She was so heads down. She kind of never looked up. And I remember one day, and we were looking for a file upstairs in the days when you all had files. And so he said, let's go ask Jess where it is. And I said, no, she's left. And we found it, just really, she's great. And I think Claire, and when she came to they came to New York, and I love her.
They have Jupiter here, and they have King downtown. They're opening Dean's pub in just a few weeks. And Claire has her beautiful restaurant upstate, Stissing House. They're all moms now.
I know.
She must be so proud
I
of.
know, little friend. I haven't seen. I love nothing more than we believe and do what they do. It's so exciting. April Bloomfield is in Brooklyn, and Jess is here, and I'm sure there are, so many other people.
But back to being a good mentor. What does it take?
I don't know. A lot of it is trust and looking at people as individuals. If you set up the standard you want them to have by a certain time, it doesn't really work. There may be, there are certain people that have worked, you can't hurry. As far as, you say, come on, and then they try but then you sort of think, well, how can that person work in the kitchen? Some people, I dare say, aren't really good at being on time. And so you try and work with that. There are some things that you look at the individual and think, it's a bit, how can we take that? And then I suppose if I want to come to work, I hope they'll want to come to work. And I do want to go to work. And I want to make a place, the River Cafe, where you want to come to work. But again, it's not because you're going to get, a big hug when you walk in the door. I think it's very important to give people time to rest, to have a break. You don't like people doing too many shifts a week. You want people to thrive. And, in a restaurant, I always think if I go to a restaurant, the waiter is grumpy. They probably haven't been fed well, or, they've had too many nights, or maybe they just don't want to be waiters.
You famously still like to be in your restaurant.
I do.
I'm amazed how many chefs and restaurateurs consider it a mark of success to not go to their restaurants.
Oh, really? No, I love it. For my birthday last year, we were on the garden, they sang happy birthday, and they did a quiz. And how many pieces of Nemesis have we sold since 1987? And I could kind of do it in my head. And I kind of guessed it, And then they said, where does the squid come from? I could get that one. And what's the name of the man who supplies us pecorino? And they said, who eats in the River Cafe most? And we do have some guests, the Gaffins, who come every Monday and Tuesday night. I always know the day of the week because I always see them. They said that every Monday and Tuesday they're there. And then the ones who come, a friend of mine, Karsten, his family, eat every Sunday. So I went through that.
That's goals,
they said, no,
to be a River Cafe regular.
Yeah, but I was wrong. I was wrong with the Gaffins. I was wrong with Karsten. I was wrong with everybody. And the person apparently who eats in the restaurant most was me. So I think that says something, that I really love being there.
You did, however, also say, it might have been the How Long Gone podcast, obviously I listened to that this morning, that restaurants are problems. And that's something that Danny Meyer says as well. Mm-hmm. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. How do you reframe when you've got a business that just presents complicated things all day long?
Yeah, there's some things I can't do. I don't know how to do. And so you have a team of people that are better doing things than I am, and that's for sure. A lot of people. And I think problem solving is a lot to do with listening and navigating and communicating. And, it can be a problem which sometimes I have a day in the restaurant where I just feel I'm putting out fires, but I think everybody does that in their work. When a journalist called me once for an interview and said, it must be so hard being a chef. And I said, it must be so hard being a journalist, because everything is hard and it's problem solving, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is. Were you always a good problem solver?
Oh, that's a hard question. I'm not sure. I think you learn when you have children. You learn when you've been in different situations. You learn. I'm a great one for seeking advice. I'm always calling somebody up on the phone and saying, what should I do? I do that a lot, maybe too much.
Are you a good delegator?
Yeah, that I am, I think. I hope so. And I try and persuade. The phrase I really don't like is, by the time I teach someone, I could do it myself. And I don't think that's a great way to look at it. Yes, it may take you more time. Do it.
That's a great piece of advice. All right, I'm going to ask you our final question we ask everybody. If you had to be trapped on a desert island with one food celebrity, who would it be and why?
Celebrity.
That question is kind of my nod to Desert Island Discs.
There's so many people, and you're really walking into a trap, right, by asking me that. So I won't go for the friendship or somebody I don't really know, but who I really, I'm in awe of right now, and that's Jose Andres.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I really think that in a world where they talk about problem solving in terms of inequality, in terms of the war, in terms of wars, in terms of struggles, and how we all kind of try and figure out what to do, he does it. And he does it with such energy and dignity and bravery. And I just really would think that I would be able to learn so much from him and talk about so much. So he's my hero.
He deserves that Nobel Peace Prize.
He really does. Yeah.
I hope he gets it soon. Are you eating anywhere fun while you're in the city?
I'm going to Balthazar tomorrow. I'll go to King. And of course, most importantly for me is Chez Ma Tante, which is managed by my granddaughter Ivy, and Chef Gabe is in the kitchen. And actually now my other grandson, Ivy's brother, Asa, is a waiter. So that's a family Rogers restaurant, and it's delicious. So I'll definitely be going there.
Your grandkids are following you into the business. That's amazing.
Maybe. Yeah, I hope so.
Well, Ruthie, what a pleasure seeing you.
Thank you. It's our family. It's our tradition. And I'm so thrilled to be here. And I think this is beautiful, and what you do is so great. And I do want to interview you. Okay?
One day.
Promise?
One day. I promise.
Okay.
But thank you for everything you do and everything you put into the world, and also just the example you've set for so many of us.
Thank you.
That's it for today's show. Thank you to Peter Somm and Rockefeller Center for supporting our show. Our theme song is by the band Tra La La. Joseph Hazen is the studio engineer for Newsstand Studios at Rockefeller Center. Our producers are Catherine Baker and Jenna Sadu. Our executive assistant is Bridget Pittman. And our head of partnerships is Rachel Close. Thanks for listening, everybody. You're the bomb.